For the last couple of months I've been working on a new program for my little red remote. This little red remote has an Arduino inside, and it has 4 foot switches and 4 LEDs as you can see. But it also has 2 relays that mimic switches and Midi in and out as well. You might have seen this thing before for the Boss RC3 loop station, where I've programmed it so it converts Midi tempo to tap tempo, so it stays in sync with your DAW or something. And I've also written a program that mimics an expression pedal. From these 2 projects I've also made videos, so you can check them out on my YouTube channel. Now, for this thing I want to control 2 Electro Harmonix Freezes, as you can see on the top right. And to control these I've added an external footswitch input. I drilled a hole in the enclosure and added a footswitch jack that's connected to the actual footswitch. So now it can be controlled via this little red remote. Now I've written a new program to control those 2 Electro Harmonix Freezes, as well as the Line6 HX Stomp via Midi. And that's because the HX Stomp has a freeze effect that's called the polysustain, but it takes up way too much DSP to be useful in a complete setup. There's hardly no room for other effects when you use it. And another downside is that it's only mono and not stereo, and hence the 2 EHX Freezes that I've bought. Now I've written this program for the HX Stomp, but it'll probably work on other multi-effects as well, as long as there are 2 effects loops on the thing, where you can add the freezes in between. And those effects loops should be controllable via Midi for the send and return levels. Now for the setup I've not just made 1 or 2 programs, but I've actually written 5 different programs. Before we get into it, I'll first show you my signal path. This setup is a bit of a step down from my normal pedalboard, or a light version of it. The little red remote has a TRS split cable coming out of it. Those control the 2 EHX Freezes, and there's a MIDI cable from its output to the Line6 HX Stomp MIDI input. My guitar is my slightly modified Fender Stratocaster. The output goes into the Electro Harmonix Bass 9, and this splits my guitar signal into the normal guitar sound and faux bass sound. The normal guitar sound goes into the left input of the HX Stomp, and the bass sound goes into the right input of the HX Stomp. Now the guitar and bass both have their own signal paths. Guitar has the tube screamer in front of the amp, and the bass has a compressor before it. And now and after that they both have their effect loop blocks. So the guitar goes to the left freeze and the bass sound goes to the right freeze. And from the freezes it returns back to the HX Stomp, and both outputs of the HX Stomp are recorded in my DAW. So I can mix both the guitar and bass levels individually. So the guitar sound sounds like this. And the bass sound sounds like this. You can turn them on both at the same time. So then there's also a pitch shifter involved, which mimics power chords from the guitar. The first program that I've written is called the All Freeze modes. The freeze has 3 modes, which are fast, slow and latching. And the freezes stay in the fast modes, and the other 2 are mimicked by the red remote. So in this way you can use the normal foot switches from the freezes as fast mode. You can use the top 2 foot switches for the slow mode on the red remote. And the bottom 2 foot switches are for the latching mode. You have to double tap them to actually stop them again. So as I've told you, the left freeze is for the guitar sound. and the right one is for the bass. So in this way you can sustain 2 different sounds for the whole thing. On slow mode sounds like this. And the cool thing is that you can actually combine the slow and the latch mode. So when you press and hold the foot switch for the slow mode, you can also press the bottom foot switch and engage the latching mode as well. And now you can hard stop it or just slow stop it as well. I forgot I had to double tap the thing. But yeah, so now it has a slow attack and a fast decay. And it goes the other way as well. So when you engage latching mode, now you can press the slow button and it'll engage the slow decay. And when the decay hits the 0 point, the latching mode is then cancelled. And the cool thing is that with this program you can actually go into the code and add your own attack and decay times. So now you can have custom attack and decay times, and you're not dependent on the attack and decay times by the slow mode of the freeze. The second program is called Solo and Mute, and that's the one that you've heard in the intro jam as well. This is for the guitar and bass sound at the same time. So now with the left 2 foot switches, I can hold the guitar and the bass sound at the same time. So both freezes are engaged. And I can play a guitar solo over it. And in this mode, the bottom 2 foot switches are momentary and the top foot switches are latching. So. And now the latching ones. And when you engage the left foot switches, it also mutes the bass input. So you only hear the guitar when it's playing a solo. And the other 2 are for a bass solo. So now it only holds the guitar sound and it mutes the guitar input, so you can play a bass solo over it. And the bottom one is momentary. Not only does it hold the guitar and bass sound in this case, but it also slowly lowers the volume of the freeze sounds. And this is to mimic natural guitar ringing and just decaying, you know, because when you hit the string, the note decays and slowly dies out. So I've mimicked that by sending a CC message to control the mix of the freezes, and you can see it in the display of the HX Stomp when you look at the mix parameter. So in this way, the note slowly dies out when you hold the foot switch. And it goes back to 100% as well when you release the foot switch. Now the third program that I've written for this thing is called the dual layer. And in this mode you can alternate between the 2 freezes, but they're both engaged at the same time. There's a slightly other signal path. There's no more bass sound, and now it's just a clean guitar sound. The bottom right foot switch automatically goes to the next freeze. Let me show you. When you first press it, it freezes the first one. When you press it again, it freezes the second. When you press it again, the first one freezes again, and so on. Now the bottom left foot switch stops the whole thing. But you can also manually add layers as well. When something is engaged, so now the last layer has been the right freeze, but you can also reset that layer automatically by pressing the top right foot switch. And the left one as well. And the remote remembers which one was the last, so when you press the bottom right foot switch, it also automatically goes to the next freeze. So that's really cool. And this is a little bit more of an ambient mode. And this program utilizes the freezes in fast mode, but you can also do it in slow mode as well, for a little bit slower attack and decay. Now this program is called the triple layer. It's the same as the dual layer effect, but now it has a third freeze. And the third freeze is done by the polysustain program on the HX Stomp. This one works quite the same as the dual layer program. When you want to stop it, you have to double tap the bottom foot switch. With the other 3 foot switches, you can still change those layers. So the 5th program that I've written is called the Infinite Freeze. It sounds like this. So what this does is when you press the bottom right foot switch, the first freeze is engaged. But when you press it again, all those sounds from the first freeze, along with the notes you're playing at the moment, are then loaded onto the right freeze. And when you press it again, all of those sounds from the right freeze are transferred back to the left freeze again. So in this way you can sustain forever, and it only decays as much as you've set the effect level on the freezes. Let me demonstrate. So now we've come to a point where you can barely hear the low A ever again. And with the bottom left foot switch, you can kill the whole thing. Now when you decrease the effect level on the freezes, it actually decays faster. So now you can barely hear the low E again. When you increase the levels on the freezes, it'll actually get louder on every time you add a layer. So that's something you have to keep in mind when you're using this program. On this program, you can use the freezes in the fast mode, but you can also use them in the slow mode. So it actually works as well. So those are the 5 programs that I've written for this little red footswitch to control both freezes and HX Stomp as well. Again, if you have another effect that also reacts to Midi, that has 2 FX loops as well, it might actually work on other effects other than the HX Stomp. Maybe some other Helix effects by Line6 or some multi-effects by Boss or Ampero or something. So that's something you have to consider. The code is freely available on GitHub. I'll put a link in the description and maybe use it for your own project. Now to change modes on the red remote. There's 2 ways to actually do that. The first way is to reset the power on it and then holding a foot switch. So now it's in the solo and mute program that I've demoed in the beginning. So that's the second program. The other 3 programs are done with the other foot switches. And when you start it up and you don't hold a foot switch, then it will go to the all freeze mode. So that's the fast, slow, and latching mode on the freeze. So that's one way of changing the programs, but you can also send MIDI PC messages to it. Now it's on channel 16, so when you send PC message 1 to 5 or 0 to 4, depending how you count, the foot switch will change modes. And the cool thing is that it has MIDI through. So when you send something on the other 15 channels of MIDI, it'll actually go through the pedal and straight to the next pedal you have in your MIDI chain. So it's actually well capable of being in a MIDI chain. So that's the remote. 5 different programs in one setting to control 2 EHX freezes as well as another pedal. If you have any questions about it, just leave a comment below on this video and I'll get back to you.